Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CT Support Group podcast. I'm Jules. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the peer support specialist with CT Support Group. And I'm joined today by our project manager, Quinn.
Hi, folks. My name is Quinn Giannetti. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the project manager and a peer support specialist for the CT Support Group podcast and project.
Yes, wonderful. Today, we're going to be talking about peer support and what drew each of us into the work of peer support.
I'm excited to be talking about this because I feel like when we go through training to become peer support specialists, we get told a lot of the times that our stories and what draws us to this work is a part of our superpowers, and we get to do that in the day-to-day work. But I feel like there aren't as many opportunities to talk about it on a bigger scale.
That's so true, honestly. And I think it's a very unique approach within mental health field, because not a lot of people think of it as kind of lived experience, and how we can create that connection just even with talking about our lived experiences with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things that you said that you wanted to talk about was what we mean by peer support. What do we mean when
Mhm.
we say that? And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about peer support. There's some people think it's about having a paid friend or just having someone to talk to, or it's someone who is there to give you advice or something like that. But when we're talking about peer support, we're really talking about showing up and supporting people, not as professionals, but as folks who are engaging in relationship to each other mutually, and showing up to that relationship, learning and growing alongside each other, trusting the inherent wisdom that each person brings to the relationship. And
Mhm.
then, doing things like trying to explore, what we're struggling with, what's going well, what's not going well, all the things in between, and trying to find, creative ways to move towards the things that we want to move towards. And those are defined by the person, so we're not there to tell people what they should do. We're not there to tell people what they're doing wrong. We're there to just be curious and offer some
Mhm.
validation and some curiosity along the way. It really feels like peer support allows us to have this collaboration that, I think in a lot of settings, especially more professionalized settings, folks don't really get to have that same degree of collaboration and relationship and trust building.
That's very true, honestly. And I feel like a lot of the times, when we are seeking for like support, it more so is perceived as I need help and I need a fix. But the beautiful thing about peer support is that you just can be there to just be there with them. You don't need to have that stress of oh well, what can I do right now in this moment to give them that fix. It's more of just well, what can I do to support them in the moment. Like you were saying, being curious has definitely been something that's life changing to my relationships. For my own personal impact is um I stay curious by kind of asking the questions in my head, but then I'm asking them that questions what does that mean for you, or um what do you what kind of support do you feel that you need in this moment right now, or like things like that. And I just think that I feel in general we're just always as humans so quick to want to fix things,
Mhm.
and just have put a band-aid on it and just move on. But it's more than that. It's more of just just asking. And I
Yeah,
feel like that's definitely something that doesn't get overseen as much as just asking.
yeah,
That
I
goes a very
agree.
long way. Yeah.
I think one of the things that drew me to peer support too is that I can actually just not be the person who tries to jump in and rescue or fix or solve
Yes.
things. One of the things that I've noticed about the ways that I show up in some of my own tendencies is when I feel uncomfortable knowing that someone is struggling or suffering and like I want to like make that better, I actually like don't know how to do those things, right? Like I know how to support
Yes.
people in getting from point A to point B. I know what I might want or need in a situation, but like most of the time that's not what the other person like wants or needs. And
Right.
so if I'm able to like take that step back and not try to give advice or interpretations of someone else's experience, it really gives me a lot of like freedom to, support them in the ways that actually feel good and supportive, as opposed to like doing what I think might be helpful. um, but I also think one of the things that I think about a lot when it comes to peer support is that, I'm not like, yes, I'm getting paid to do this work and I'm getting paid to like, show up and, have these conversations with folks. Um, and also, I get just as much out of the peer support relationship as my participants do. Like, I learn a lot by just being able to have conversations with folks. Um, and when I don't have to be in this role where I'm expected to like fix or change or solve or offer solutions to someone, um, then I also see that like I'm also not sending that message that like there's something about you that's wrong or there's something about you that's broken or needs to be fixed or changed. Like I'm actually here to just be like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with like the ways that you are like coping with or moving through your own experiences. Like you're doing that because that's what makes sense to you. You're doing what you feel like you need to do in the moment. And like that's cool. I understand and respect that. And I want to learn more about that. And if there are things that like you want to shift or change, like I want to understand what that might look like and like what the journey might look like for you to get from where you are now to a little bit closer to where you might want to be.
Yeah, totally. I totally like value and like hear that because that was exactly like the first thing I noticed as I was kind of getting into this field was like um a lot of it was really just like, oh my God, like, I've had my experiences in like therapy and like going to certain support groups and things like that, but like I that's the thing. Like it was always just like directly like, okay, well what's the problem and how are we gonna move towards it? But it's like why am I not being asked as like a participant like, you know, what can we do? How can we do it together? Like there's a lot of togetherness like with it. And I think that's just such like a great thing that peer support has. And I think that's honestly what drew me to it as well. Um I would say more so like it definitely drew me from like working in like services and like having close relationships with like family and friends and you know I noticed myself always playing that helper role a lot of the time. And I would just get frustrated with myself like, "Oh, well, I told this person like, go do this and that." But then the one thing that peer support kind of like opened up for me was like, "But you were there for them." And like that's what they needed at that time and in that moment. Um and I realized that that was okay. Like that me just even being there as a support in that moment was what that person needed. And sometimes it doesn't have to be like you can suggest a resource and like it's up to them and we have to sometimes just trust that the person can do it for themselves or like or like us being there as kind of like that support system for them, like they'll remember that.
Mhm.
um so I think that's just like really like powerful to hear. And I appreciate you saying that because like it's true, it's about kind of like that, yeah, togetherness and like how we're gonna move forward in that.
Yeah. I think that also like kind of touches on, one of the other misconceptions that I feel like a lot of folks have about peer support is that like something needs to be going terribly wrong or you really need to be struggling or like having a really hard time in order to like get peer support. And
Yeah.
I would like to, for the record, just like dispel
Right.
that. Like you can get peer support for any reason at any time. Like you don't have to be struggling, in order to get it.
Yeah.
Like there might be things that maybe you just want a different perspective on, or something uh, that you're like excited about. something that's going really well that you want to be able to share and celebrate with someone, right? Like there's so many reasons why folks can seek support. And I also think that like in a time where folks are feeling really kind of disconnected from each other and trying to figure out how to do a relationship and how to find groups that they want to be a part of, and how to build their community and feel just a little bit more like they have a bunch of people around them who like care about them and want to support them, and these are folks that they also care about and like want to show up for and support. um it's really important to like have spaces to sort of like practice relationship, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't think there's a lot of places where you can actually, practice relationship in a way that's like not in a I don't know, sort of professionalized or like hierarchical sense where like, some person has like more power in some way, shape, or form over the other. But in peer support, where we're actively, not just like naming the power that, we
Mhm.
may have in the relationship, but also like doing things to try to dismantle some of that power and, dispel some of um, the worries that folks may have around, having conversations with a peer supporter, is another like super important part of the work that we're able to do. I think that like for so many people, they like there might be parts of them that know that like our relationships to each other are like one of the most abundant resources that we actually have in a time
Yeah.
where so many people are struggling to like meet their basic needs. Like we all have access to like build relationship, and it doesn't all look the same, but we all have opportunities where we like encounter people that we like might want to get to know better and might want to be able to like have a stronger connection with, whether that's like a neighbor or a barista at your local coffee shop or a peer supporter or someone that you meet at like a social event or whatever it may be. Like we all have access to like build stronger relationships, and giving folks some room to like practice those things is, I think, one of the coolest pieces of the work.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I just want to point out that I know in the beginning of you mentioned about like even having to reach out for the peer support doesn't always have to be like you're in a sad or like upset mood. Like it could literally just be that like sometimes you want to be able to share some news, like maybe it's something exciting and like um sometimes like you need someone to kind of just share this out loud with, because I know for me like I have a lot of those moments where um sometimes I just want to call my parents but they're like busy doing something, but I'm like I need to share this exciting news like right here right now. And so I think it's a really beautiful thing that like we get to do that in our work also, is like just literally be like, oh yes, I'm excited for you as well, like so it's really nice in that aspect. And yes, I agree with like um you know making those connections, like even overall, like whoever it is, wherever you are, and that's also really special as well.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah. And I I just also want to touch a little more upon like the history of peer support and kind of like where it's like originated from a little bit as well. And I mean, um it's been around for quite a while. I mean, I think like now as of like within 2026 and like 20 in 2020, like it kind of reached more upon it, cuz like even me, like I just found out about peer support work literally like 2 years ago now. um
Mhm.
and it's been just so life changing, and I hoping that like this is kind of like the area of like growth of like peer support. So yeah, I know it's been around for like quite some time. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of I mean, there's not like a very like super clear and distinct point of where, peer support came to be from. Like some people trace it back to France in like the
France and
1800s. Some people
yeah.
trace it more to like the 60s, 70s, 80s, where there was a little bit more rise in, things like counterculture and where folks were spending more or had like some more like emphasis on community and community building and resource sharing and those kinds of things. And I think like peer support has probably existed for as long as humans have existed. Like I think even before we had formal language, like that folks were, showing up and supporting each other and taking on roles and like, meeting each other's needs. And I think like, one of the things that I think about is like we all have this sort of like natural, desire to like connect with other people. And, there are some of us who have like really important skills, right? That like we can share with other people. And I think, one of the things that I really love about being able to do peer support is like being able to share, some of the wisdom that I've gained in my, in my
Oh,
time here,
yes.
not just like, not even, just in doing, peer support work, but like, just the wisdom that I've gained from like doing relationship with other people, doing like
Mhm.
friendship or, you know, like doing community oriented relationships, like doing work alongside people, engaging in like mutual aid, like all of those things I think have taught me a
Mm.
lot about supporting other people. And um, it's been a really exciting part of my journey, and especially being able to work with young people to like offer some of the things that I've learned along the way, and being able to share those like little nuggets of wisdom. And most of the time goes over really well. A lot of folks are like really appreciative of, some of the things or some of the tools or some of the stories that I have to share. And that's like, one of the things that I just really, really appreciate, especially about like working for this project and being able to like work with young people who are, I say young people as if I like am not really one. I think I'm kind of in this weird limbo of, being young and also, having a little bit more time on earth than some of the folks that I'm supporting. But it's cool. It's like a cool part of my journey that like I'm excited to be able to share.
I love that so much. Yes. And I agree. Like, when I first got into like the field and everything, I never noticed like how much you know, it's nice to like have like young adults like get to have these different resources. And like, I mean, I'm 24 years old, and I'm like so happy that I even know that these like certain resources exist, or like there's things like this out there. Because like I'll talk to my parents sometimes, and they literally tell me all the time like we did not have any of that back then.
Mhm.
Like it was hard, or if they did, it was like really hard to like get access to just like having peer support, or like um getting those like certain things. So it's really nice to just like be able to have a platform dedicated to that. And then now recently they're kind of bringing it more to teens as well, which
Mhm.
is awesome. Like um and I'd like to share too that I like kind of played a part into creating the youth peer program a little bit. So by Choice Recovery, they were kind of like trying to figure it out, and we're asking like input. So it was like really cool to like being able to touch upon my own experience as like when I was a teenager. Like I had to literally flashback like, geez, like I mean, I did wish that I had that at the
Mhm.
time. But I'm glad that like there are these great platforms for young adults now. And um, I feel that it's expanding upon the years as it comes. Like there's these newer things that um, people don't see or like know of, but like now it's getting more and more out there because it's a lot of like word of mouth, but also like people just resharing and things like that. And social media is a big platform, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice. And I honestly also love working for the project and just being able to like know that there's like a space where like these folks can come and like just be able to have that peer support. It's amazing. Um, and I always tell myself, I'm like, I'm 24, but I'm like, I wish I knew about it even in my start of the 20s. Like, I wish I knew about it when I was 20 years old, because you kind of reach a point where it's like, okay, like I have friends and I have family that's like here with that support, but like I feel like I need like a third party person as like another support to like see if where I'm going is okay. And I mean, um, it's great to know that like yeah, we have these kinds of platforms that can do that now, and like I was saying for the teenagers as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's cool too that we get to offer like a different kind of support to teenagers that's like non-clinical. I think,
Yes.
there's um, a lot of value in, folks like, being able to access things like therapy and stuff. And also like, I recognize that that's not something that's like accessible for everyone. It might, and for some folks, like they might not find those things helpful. And so like,
Yeah.
knowing that we have this unique opportunity to sort of show up for young people in a way that is like not like labeling or diagnosing them or trying to treat or fix them, but where we can actually just have some of those like really human to human conversations about what they're experiencing and what might be helpful in terms of getting support or getting closer to the things that they want to be moving towards, um, is like my favorite part of the job for sure.
Yeah. I could say the same as well. Like I I feel like a lot of times I have met like people like even my own age that have told me like therapy is not for them.
Hmm.
Or that they just literally can't stand being in like clinical settings. Like I've had friends that have been in hospitalizations or have gone through like those different kinds of settings, and it's so different. Like, and it's surprising to me because it's like wow, like knowing what I know now, like I think back then I will say, because I didn't even know what peer support was or like anything like that. So it was very eye-opening. And
Yeah.
it's just so nice that these different alternatives exist within that because um like kind of going back to what we were talking about like with the quick fix, I think that a lot of like I feel the stigma is that like it's always like let's get to the root of the problem. Let's just like close you off, put a smile on your face and you're good to go. But it's
Yeah.
so much more than like just that alone. Like it's so exactly. I think that it's great that like we have these kinds of different alternatives for these folks, especially in that non-clinical end, because like 99% of the time when you do like say that you're feeling a certain way, like people are very quick to say, "Well, why don't you like take meds?" or like, "Why don't you go do this?" or like, "Why don't you just like," but it's it's just kind of like easier said than done sort of thing.
Mm,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I think like in some situations too, like um because of like the limited time that folks have, in like a therapy session or therapeutic
Yeah.
relationship or access to some sort of like mental health related program or something, right? Like a lot of the times, like the how long you can continue to receive that support is actually like not even really up to you. It's usually determined by things like insurance or your ability to afford those things, or
Yes.
um, it relies on, a clinician like staying in the same place, and being able to continue to offer, that kind of support. Um, and so like being able to have access to peer support, whether it's like in addition to getting those things, whether it's like in the meantime, whether like those things are something that like don't work for you or you need a break from, I feel like can be like a real game changer for some folks. I know, coming to the project from, having worked in some more clinical settings is definitely like, you know getting a little bit more into like, my story and, what brought me to this work. But I remember how frustrated I felt about the way that folks were treated in some of those spaces, and a lot of the assumptions, that some of the folks who were working in those more clinical roles had about, the folks who were there to get help or support. There was this very much like you're the problem mindset versus like what's
Mhm.
happening to you or the things that you're experiencing or the things that you need to find ways to cope with, are the problem. And then being able to sort of find my way to the project in kind of like an unconventional way, but kind of stumbling upon the project and then being able to, start doing this peer support work and being able to, resist some of that like individualism,
Yeah.
especially, you know, some of that messaging that folks get around like, the way that you're responding is the problem, or the thing that you're yeah, the things that you're doing in response to these things that you don't have control over are the problem. But instead shifting towards like the things that are happening to you are the problem. The fact that you're not able to like afford to meet your basic needs is a problem. The fact that you can't, find stable housing is the problem. It's not you. Like you're not doing these things. Like you're not the problem. It's like you're in this, world that is like not set up to, be able to meet your your needs. Like you're not failing because you can't do those things. um and then being able to have some conversations about like finding creative ways to like meet some of those needs, having conversations about things like interdependence as opposed to like being independent and self-sufficient, and that you can only rely on yourself and like that's it, you're all you have. Like, and the work that I get to do with the participants who come to the project, and even my work outside of the project, and sort of peer support in general, the work that I get to do is sort of dispelling those things and being like, no, actually, like you have other people, like you have folks who care about you, you have people that want you to do well, and you have people in your life who have like these tools and skills that they can offer to you so that like you don't actually have to be like struggling. You also have like so many gifts that you're able to like offer to people in the ways that feel comfortable and feel good for you. Like, we can create a little bit more of this world that like we feel like we want to be living in. um it's just a matter of like being able to take a step outside of this mindset that like there's something inherently wrong with us. If we can like move from actually there's not something wrong with me, and I have a lot to offer, and I have people who want to offer their gifts and tools and skills and resources to me as well, that's like, for in my opinion, like a much better situation for folks to be in.
Right. Exactly.
Was there
Exactly.
something specific that like sort of led you to the world of peer support?
So I think what really led me into the world of peer support was it was so I mean, I work a lot in like doing services and things like that. Like I do beauty, I'm an esthetician too, and makeup artist. So I think a lot of it is like I'm working with people like a lot one on one, and I mean, people come to those kinds of like beauty spaces where like they just they want to let it all out sometimes. Like I've
Mhm.
literally had clients, like lay on the table and they're telling me their entire life story. And, I obviously want to care because I'm taking care of not just like their physical like appearance, but I'm also taking care of like how they are emotionally. And like I would never like to be that person that's like, oh well, yeah, sorry about that. Like, I'm just I know that for myself that I'm a very like passionate person. Like I like to just like be able to give that active listening to one another. And so like the way I kind of got more into it was so I come from a background where I've gone to places like intercommunity. Um I had a case manager at the time who like was kind of helping me reach my goals, and I expressed to her that I dealt a lot with like um just kind of like my social skills in general and things like that. And she actually introduced me to Join Rise B.
Mhm.
And for that, Join Rise B is a young adult warm line. It's also like a young adult program that offers like different things within the program. So they have like a Rise leadership training, they have Summer Fun Fest, and then a leadership summit. All amazing things. So like strictly kind of more so focusing on young adults. Anybody could call the warm line just to like literally offer that peer support over the phone, which is amazing. So shout out to Join Rise B.
For
um,
sure.
Yes. But so she introduced me to that, and I attended their Rise leadership training. And just from that experience alone, I felt like I was opening a whole new door for myself. Like I literally was
Mhm.
like, like I never knew that like, there was different stress management techniques. I didn't realize that there's this thing called recovery, and that recovery is like not linear. And because I think the other thing is like recovery was always known to be like just for drinking or like just for certain things. Like it wasn't meant as like a whole thing. And when I was taught that, I was like, oh wow. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy, like that, this exists, like that recovery is more than just about like, a problem that you're going through, but more so like how you are as a person and
Mhm.
like getting that support over time. So, um, when I was introduced to that, I realized like, wow, this really like changes the game for me now. Like, and we were learning about within like peer support, like, what are like boundaries and like what are things that you can do to just be that support for somebody in the moment, or like what are things that you can do to move towards. Like I was learning a lot of the things that you would learn in like peer support, and from there on I was like kind of implementing those skills with my personal life. And all I had to do was ask. Like, um some of my friends would express certain things to me and I would just be like asking questions, and I was like, wow, like this actually changes the game for me like so much. And like even in my own like within my clients, like my clients would tell me stories and I just stood curious. Like I was like, oh, like, and I'm over here like just doing my job and like doing my service, but I'm like, wow, like it makes such a difference. Like you can tell that like just that connection alone, you feel more like in tune with them, basically.
Mhm.
Like you feel like you're not only there just to like be there and like listen, but like you're there and like you're there with them in that moment and you're supporting them in that moment and you're asking in the moment.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just been like a very big game changer for me. And it actually like I feel like peer support has really given me a lot of professional development. Um, for a long time, I did struggle with like having boundaries, and to this day, I still sort of fawn a little bit, just because
Mhm.
that's part of me. But it has tremendously helped, uh, and made me feel like that there are possibilities. And I think
Mhm.
that's the beautiful thing with peer support is like it just kind of opened like these possibilities for me. Like it's not just the end all be all, like that's it, cut. Like there's more. Like, okay, like this didn't work out, but the possibilities are et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now I always tell myself that like, oh well, okay, this didn't work out, but the possibilities are like, and that actually like has helped me like grow as a person as well. So that's kind of just like my little background on like how I kind of got into peer support. And like finding CT support group has also been amazing. And well, yes, I know I work here, but I absolutely love it. I honestly really loved it from the start. Like when I first found out about CT support group, I was like, "Oh, what is this?" Well, and I like looked at the website and I loved that resource map. I think that was like the one thing that I actually start on my computer that I still have to this day. Because it was so amazing to know that like I could just go on this link and there's like all these different like resources even I could use, or like I can refer like to others as well. Like there was just a place for that. And I find that it's so hard sometimes to find those resources. So but and not only that, I think I loved the our blog posts and everything that we have on there. Like it's almost inspiring just to hear like other people's stories. And being able to just have a platform for that is like so great. Just because like there's not a lot of places that would offer those kinds of things. So like that's what I love about like our organization at CT Support Group, and just being able to like have a whole Discord as well, like for that community to also come together, and open that space up for like different things, and like offer like not even just like we're gonna focus just on peer support, but even funness like game nights, or like art shows and things like that. So that's absolutely what I love about peer support in general, is that it's not just strictly like what's wrong? How are we gonna fix you? It's just it can be so much broader. Like it can just be like whether it's me working in spa or like us doing art together or like us even just having coffee. Like, it's you can like be openly creative and have fun with it, which is like I think one of my favorite things about peer support as well. And as I've kind of like gone into the field. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that journey. I love it. I love the way that you described that, like, peer support for you was kind of like an eye opener. It was like, oh, all these doors just started opening. And I was like, oh, like there's so much possibility here. And I also like the way that you talk about, how peer support can really happen anywhere. Like, I think as a project, we really try to, embrace, the fact that like peer support can happen in like a wide variety of arenas of folks' lives.
Oh
um,
yeah.
and that like it doesn't have to be formal, it doesn't have to be like professionalized, like it really can just be about having conversations and learning and growing alongside each other and getting curious about what folks experiences are and what those mean to them.
Mhm.
um and just like, yeah, like having that space to just like be with each other, and where I feel like, in a world that feels like we have fewer and fewer spaces to actually just like do that. I feel like peer support is trying to open, more of those opportunities for folks for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you so much for having me share that. And thank you for acknowledging like everything I said as well. Really appreciate that.
Practicing peer
Mhm.
support while talking about peer support.
Yes, exactly. What we're here for. And now I'm actually curious to know like um a bit of your story. Like how did you kind of like get into peer support as well and like your background with it?
My journey into peer support kind of happened like around the time of the pandemic, like a little bit after that.
Mm,
Um, I was someone who was like impacted by job loss during the pandemic and was,
mm,
trying to take some time to figure out what my next steps were going to be. I had experienced some burnout and some frustration, like having worked in some clinical settings and just like seeing how folks were treated in those settings, knowing that like it didn't quite feel right, and I felt like something better was possible, and I just didn't have the language or the experience or knowledge to like communicate that, or to bring that into being in a way that like I fully understood or made sense of. So um I stumbled upon the project just in like looking at different, job opportunities, and um came onto the project as, someone who was working part-time. I got trained in peer support. Um, I continued to get training in peer support, in different ways, like, as both a group facilitator and for, just more broad peer support. Um, and as I like continued to grow and practice offering peer support in like a variety of different ways and settings, both like with the project, with other organizations, doing some, peer support based like community education sort of on my own. I just like continued to really like fall in love with the practice. And I'm not someone who identifies myself like by my job because
mm,
it feels a little bit like internalized capitalism. And I see the way that the things that I've learned from, practicing peer support and learning about peer support, and um, just kind of like doing it as my paid work. Like I see the benefits that that has had in my personal life, in, other arenas of my life, whether it's like the more educational ones or, the interpersonal or um, the more creative parts. I feel like I see it, showing up in all of those different ways. I think also like being connected to folks who had really struggled like being in, more clinical settings, on the patient side, struggling with the ways that they were treated or feeling like they weren't able to get everything that they needed. Feeling
mm,
like in those settings, sometimes they were like really removed from the things and the people that they felt like they needed most, like
mm.
their community, removed from spending time outside, removed from having access to like their own technology to be able to reach out to people, like those kinds of things. Like I think, seeing just how like difficult some of those experiences were and how folks were feeling, when they entered some of these like programs or things like that versus like when they came out, how they were, talking to me about how they were feeling. I was like, dang, like there's got to be something better. Like there's got to be a better way. Um, and so like, this is something that has touched me, like, and some of my friends, this is something that has definitely touched parts of my family. And just like knowing that there had to be something different, there had to be other possibilities, there had to be more creative ways of, supporting people who are having a hard time, was really what made me excited about being able to do peer support work. And then, as I jumped into the project and learned, more and more about, the practice of peer support and the history and the folks that we have to look back on who really were formative in shaping the way that peer support exists now. Folks who spent a lot of time like fighting against the co-optation or the clinical role drift in peer support, just like looking at these folks who really had like a clear vision of what they wanted, peer support to look like, what they had hoped for, peer support relationships, was really just like one of the things that like spoke to me and really kind of like grounded and rooted me in something that like I just didn't have language or experience for yet. And
Mm,
so like being able to have, some of the education and the training, but also I think being able to have like the language around like, oh, something actually is possible. And I've felt this, like I felt that there's something different that we could be doing. And I didn't know what it looked like. And now I do, and I get to do it. Wild. Like how
right.
lucky.
Oh yeah, definitely. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like, I just wanted to acknowledge that like I feel the same way. Like when I what stood out to me was when you were like, there has to be another way. I I always like kind of knew that within me. Like it was almost like a weird like spiritual exchange cuz like, like same thing like I said before, like I've had, friends or um family or that have had like those clinical experiences and I'm like, I always just knew, like, in me, I'm like, "There's just gotta be something else, like, some sort of alternative," but I just didn't know what it was. So I definitely just wanna acknowledge and, like, kind of just, like, relate to that because like, it's so true. I feel like that's what's so nice about, like, what we get to do is, like,
Mhm,
prosper and, like, find, like, those, extended resources for folks.
mhm.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to ask, like, what, like, kind of drew you into giving or like seeking peer support?
Um, that's a great question. I think like uh one of the things that I think brought me or drew me into like wanting to provide peer support is the understanding that like it's something that I like in times that I was struggling, whether it was like as a teenager, as a young adult, especially as a college student. I think like undergrad was pretty hard for me,
Mm,
both emotionally and sort of practically in a lot of ways. And knowing that, I was going to therapy every week and like the stressors that I had and the things that I was experiencing didn't feel like they were shifting a whole lot. And I think I just was like hoping for or wishing that, I could have a conversation with someone who would be able to like zoom out with me and take a look at the bigger picture as opposed to, telling me that the ways that I was, coping with or not coping with the things that were stressing me out were the problem, as opposed to like the systems that were in place or the things that I was experiencing that were, resulting from the way that things were set up. And like, whether it was like, you know, capitalism, which I think made undergrad really hard for me practically, and emotionally, but,
oh yeah, valid.
whether it was like some of those systems or, some of the ways that like I was being treated in different arenas that I was in, instead of, being able to have conversations about those things and the ways that they were impacting me, a lot of it was just like, okay, well, I understand that you're 21, but like you're drinking too much. And no one had ever
Mhm.
asked, like, well, why are you drinking? Like, what is that doing for you? Like, is that
Yeah.
something that you are, interested in like shifting or changing? And at the time, like I wasn't, there were a lot of things that I really didn't want to feel. And so I was like drinking and drugging in order to like not feel those things.
Wow.
And knowing that I like had those experiences and like wished that someone had just like taken some time to notice. And I actually did like have a professor in undergrad who did kind of pull me aside and say like during his office hours, like, what's going on? Like, tell me what you're experiencing. And like my goal in that meeting was to get out of there as soon as possible. And this professor was not having that. But having had that experience of that like really deep like witnessing and knowing that he wasn't there to tell me that like what I was doing was bad or wrong, but was just there to like understand what I was experiencing, why I was making the choices that I was making, or why I felt like I didn't have other choices that I could make, made a really big difference for me. And so I think like wanting to sort of be the grown up that like I wished I had had when I was younger
Mm.
is one of the things that really drew me into like both giving and seeking peer support. I think as a peer supporter, having access to be able to, talk about the work that I'm doing and getting peer support from other people who are doing similar work has been like a really big game changer. I think that's something that allows me to continue doing that work. But I think if I was in the same mindset in the same space that I was like when I was in college, I might not be doing that, right? Like I might be doing this work in ways that was like burning me out or making me really tired or making me feel like I couldn't do it anymore. So I'm really grateful to like be able to have some of those spaces for sure.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing like more within your like experience and like how it's got like what got you more into like that peer support world. And I just want to acknowledge that like that's really like what an interesting like story to tell because like I think that that's definitely like great that your professor got to just ask you and just not make you feel like there was something wrong or like kind of like dehumanizing in any way because I feel like um yeah, like a lot of people just tend to kind of do that. So it was nice that like just to literally be asked like that question. It's like wow. And it's that's what makes it such a like great thing is like you're just asking and staying curious. But yeah, I'm wondering too, like, how would you say like you describe peer support in like your own words?
For me, it really is just like it boils down to one word, and that's relationship. Like I think peer support
Yes.
is really just about relationship. And if I had to add like another word to that, I would maybe say conversation too,
Yes.
or like a give and take kind of conversation. Um, but I think peer support for me is really honestly about like witnessing and reflecting, right? Like witnessing someone in whether it's in like their joy and their excitement and their desire to celebrate something, or it's like, witnessing someone in their struggle, in their despair, and the really hard things that like are really difficult to, have conversations about with other folks. Um, so I think that, yeah, that witnessing, that, reflecting, back to someone, what I'm hearing from them, asking them questions to get more clarity, inviting feedback from people too. I think like that's one of the things that peer support has taught me that was like not really a skill that I had before I started doing this work. Um,
Mm,
is being able to ask people like, how are you experiencing like our connection? Is this something that like feels helpful and supportive? um do you feel comfortable telling me if I'm like missing the mark, or if I say or do something that like hurts your feelings, or shakes your trust, or um something like anything along those lines? Like I don't think I used to be someone who is super open to hearing those things and to getting feedback from people, but I also have recognized how absolutely critical that is for like being able to actually have relationships to other people. So I think those are the things that I would use to describe peer support. I think it's like so broad and like expansive. I think creativity is definitely a big piece of it.
Yes.
But I definitely wouldn't limit the definition of peer support to be something like um, offering support to someone or like sharing resources with them. Like that feels like really finite and kind of like a one and done kind of deal. And
Yeah.
for me, like peer support is more fluid and can be ongoing
Hmm.
and can shift and change. It feels a little bit like water in that way. Like it can shift and
Right.
change to like meet the container of the relationship, you know, and that may shift and change over time. But like I think the beauty of peer support is how adaptable it is and how it's able to like I don't know, to not be super rigid, to not it doesn't feel like you have to adhere to a formula or a recipe or a bunch of like rules and guidelines and expectations. Like it can actually just be like what it needs to be moment to moment.
Yeah, for sure, exactly. And I would agree and say that like if I had to pick like a word, it's more like connection. Like anytime that I even like am saying like I'm giving peer support, I more so say it as like I just want to connect. Like I just want to connect like with you rather than like, cuz I don't know. I mean sometimes people just need me. Like sometimes
Hmm.
people just want me there to be there. Like they don't even want the support. Like they, like just my presence alone is like that's the support. So I
Hmm.
see it also as kind of like a connection and like um I see it I sometimes also see it with like doing IPS, like so IPS intentional peer support. Um and like just even taking that course alone was like wow. Like I never realized how structured like that what that support can look like. I think of like mutuality the most too because like we're staying mutual with each other. Like maybe there's things that may work for you, may not work for me, but like we're meeting that ground. Like we're being like mutual. Um and then yeah, that connection. Oh, and moving towards like all kind of like three of those little like those three words I feel like kind of just align with like how I see peer support. Cuz I that's like the one thing I always ask myself is like if there is like let's say for example like a certain issue or like there's something I'm always looking at like the how are we going to move towards from it rather than like oh it is what it is like I'm somebody where I'm like okay like even if it involves like having to just not even worry about it anymore. Is that how we're gonna like choose to move towards it? So like I see it as like, you know, um we're gonna create that mutuality, like understand what's maybe going on and like we're connecting about it. And then but like how are we gonna like kind of move towards and then what are like possibilities? That's another one that I also think about, like rather than being like, well, it is what it is, like and it's just like a close-ended like answer rather than just staying open and staying curious. So for me like it's similar, like I see it almost in that same exact way but like within like IPS and like also within my own experiences depending on like what it is and like what kind of connection that we're creating. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like
Yeah,
that.
thank you. I
Yeah,
actually
also
fun
just like using IPS too to or even just like looking at, the different tools and things that it offers just like is so helpful. It's something that I find myself like using as a refresher so
Oh
frequently.
yeah, me too. I literally have like pictures on my phone like from when I took the course like but it's like a helpful guide, like honestly, like just to be able to like just stay curious and like also like what feels supportive right now. Like it's a really great guide to just have like on hand. So I'll literally just like take a look at my phone like okay, like this is how I can remain like curious and like remain supportive, things like that. So like that's what's helpful, at least for me. Like that's what I find, yeah, most helpful. But fun fact too, I actually for my IPS course. We did like a project at the end of like the course on like, the principles and the wording. So I created a little comic strip of like a little wolf and a cat.
That's so cool.
Yes, thank you. And it was actually based off of my friends that I have that like one of my friends' favorite animal is a wolf. So I
Mhm.
did it based off of him, and he's like somebody that like I always find that I connect a lot with. Like he's almost kind of like another peer supporter. So like I saw him in that light, and then my friend as well. Like we have like our little like friend group, but I always just like tend to connect with them. So I did the story kind of based off of them, but I, defined it with the principles, and it was really nice. Took a lot of sketching. It was great.
Yeah, that's so cool. If you still
Yeah.
have it, I would absolutely love to see that one day.
Oh, yes, definitely. I was gonna say I think I have a copy. I can try to find it. But yeah.
Sweet.
But yeah, but it was exactly like when you said creative too. Like I just thought of that because I feel like even like me like learning as like a recovery support specialist and within peer support, they teach us like those stress management skills, and I think the one stress management skill that tends to work for me is like coloring. And that's
Mhm.
like literally how I express like my creativity, but also still staying supportive, because it doesn't always have to be like, oh, let's do breathing technique. Like I love to do breath work as well, but it doesn't have to just be like, let's do breathing techniques and like move on.
Right.
Like so I think I also agree with like that creativity aspect to it. And like even when I'm doing makeup on myself, like that alone is like, its own way of like relieving stress. And that's kind of how I also see peer support as well, as like, yeah, we can be creative like together even. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, thank you. um, and I'm wondering, like, could you share a time when peer support made a real difference in your life?
Hmm. I feel like there's been so many of them.
I know, right?
Um, I think one of the times that like stands out, or I guess like one of the sort of like journeys that stands out for me is like I was meeting like on a fairly regular basis with a participant who was like just like having a hard time with like a bunch of things that were like more systemic and logistical as opposed to like, and those things were causing like, emotional stress for sure.
Yeah.
um but one of the things that was like a big stressor for this participant was housing, and it was not something that like I was super well versed in. Like I have a little bit of knowledge about housing things, but I also am just like someone who believes that like everyone should be safely housed and sheltered, like point blank. I don't think there's like
Mm.
any, like there's nothing that could convince me or sway me in another direction around that. And being able to like have check-ins with this person to ask questions about what they were experiencing, um, to understand what kinds of practical supports they were looking for, and then seeing that journey like result in them like securing housing, like really liking the place that they're able to be, being able to like support them, and finding ways to get like more of the material things that they needed, like connecting them with, all kinds of like folks,
Mm.
was something that was like just like really exciting and rewarding for me. Like I was just so happy to be able to see like the journey that this participant had. Um, and yeah, I think just like developing that, that peer support relationship felt super just rewarding and exciting. And it was, also something that like took place sort of over time. And um, seeing just kind of like the trust building and like the ways that we were both able to show up for each other, the things that I was like learning from this participant along the way. Um, it just was, a super rewarding experience. I've also like facilitated some groups that have been really rewarding, like just um, yeah, groups where folks have like come up to me afterwards and just like thanked me for holding the space, or
Mm.
um, naming something that I had said or asked that was really impactful for them, or really like landed with them. Um, Felt like those are like the little moments that feel um, really exciting and incredible. And then I think like the last like moment that I felt like made a real difference is it's just like I guess any situation where a bunch of folks in the peer community come together and like are moving towards like a shared goal. That was something that was really evident when there was a bill in the public health committee to try to get Connecticut to fund and open peer respites in Connecticut. And
Mm.
while that bill didn't necessarily go the way that we had hoped for, seeing how many people had packed that that room in the legislative office building, and how many peers were like, "We need this. This is important." How many folks like shared parts of their stories and their experiences about when like a time that they could have used a respite and really, had wished that there was one that was available to them. Hearing folks talk, share some stories about, times where they've been supporting someone who, and they just wish that was an option for them to offer as a resource to the participant that they were supporting. Um, that was like definitely something that was super impactful for me, was like being able to be in that room with so many people who also, a lot of folks who had been doing that work for a lot longer than I had at that point, and had a lot more experience. But being able to testify and to be in that room while other folks testified was like incredibly rewarding, and it's something that I still think about even a couple years later too. I look back on that day, on that hearing, like, wow, like we really showed up and we really did that. There were moments where some of the legislators like had a tear in their eye and like felt,
Mm.
what people were sharing was important. And just the way that the legislators were responding, I think, there were some that had shared that they hadn't felt that kind of like roaring support for something in that room in a very long time, some of them perhaps ever. So it was cool. It was a really cool experience.
Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. That sounds, wow, like really impactful, honestly. And like, um, that's just, I think that's a really beautiful connection, like, honestly, that you guys got to have, like, in the legislative office, because, like, it's, it can almost feel nerve-wracking to have to, like, go and do that, but, like, there's just something about, like, when you're together, like, within a community of people, that's what brings that peer support. Like, we are the peer supporters, but, like, when
Mhm.
we get it from each other, like, I don't know, I feel that it really makes such a difference, because we almost also, like, learn from each other as well, and I feel like that's something that, like, even for me, that I found impacted my life. I mean, like, when I talk with you, or when I'm even talking to my other coworkers who are also peer supporters themselves, it's like I feel like I'm learning from everybody.
Mhm.
And it's a really nice thing, honestly. So I think that that's really, really nice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. One of my
Yeah,
favorite parts of the job is getting to learn from other people. So,
me too. Yeah, I love that. And like, um yeah, I find it's almost similar with me as well. Like, um, I sometimes I'm like my own worst critic. Like, I'll usually be like, "Oh, well, I don't know if I responded to this okay," or like, "I could have done better to respond to this." But when I'm hearing like, "Thank you so much for just even being there," I'm like,
mhm.
"Oh, wow, okay, like, you're welcome." Like, I didn't, because then, like, I work for the Join Rise Be Warm line too, so, like, I've had a lot of callers, that have literally, like, I've literally, like, had, like, a caller just, like, vent about the entire, like, phone call, and at the end of the phone call, like, I was just gonna be like, "Well, thank you for sharing," and then she was just like, "Thank you so much for listening to me, like,
Mhm.
bye-bye," and I was like, oh, okay, like, you're welcome.
Yeah.
But, like, just little things like that alone just give me hope and, like, um, knowing, like, I love to do this work as well and, like, knowing that, like, I being able to just, like, be there, like, as that support system for them, like, makes such a difference, and, like, I've had experiences even with my own coworkers, like, I work with, one of my coworkers pretty closely on the warm line, and like, he'll talk to me about certain things and, like, he'll thank me at the end of the shift. Like, he'll be like, "Just thank you for being such a good friend and coworker." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Like,
Mhm.
so it's like little things like that just make you like realize how much you really love to be in the field and like really love to be in within peer support. So yeah.
Yeah. Those moments of, getting like feedback from folks where, or even just like those moments where folks are expressing their appreciation, whether it's like another peer supporter or, warm line caller or a participant or members of a group, like those are those are some of like, I think the most impactful moments in the ways that like they keep me like rooted and remind me like, oh, like you're doing this for a reason, you're doing this because you care, but also like the people that you're supporting like also feel that way, like they can see that you care, that that you want to be showing up and you're having positive impact on folks, and
Yeah.
that's a heck of a drug for sure.
No, so true, honestly.